Dan Bates, President and CEO, Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and we are happy that you could join us this morning on Coffee and Conversations. Our guest speaker today, you're going to be hearing from Casey from Women Helping Women about their WorkStrong program. I think it's going to be a really interesting program. But before we get started with that, we're going to do some self-introductions and tell you a little bit about how this session will go. For those of you who are on Zoom with us, you can ask questions of the speaker, either by putting in the chat box or just kind of raising your hand and asking the question. If you're on Facebook Live, which is where a large part of our audience usually is, text your message in and we will repeat it to the speaker so she can answer your questions. So with that being said, you know who I am. We can't wait to get to Casey, but we'll do that in just a minute. And I think, Tiffany, you're going to do introductions then?
Yes, so we'll start introductions. When I call your name, you can just unmute and tell us who you are, where you're from, and then we'll go to the next person. So I'll start with myself. I'm Tiffany Grubb, the Director of Membership and Marketing at the Greater Hamilton Chamber, and we'll go to Sarah. Great.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Common. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. I'm with Women Helping Women as well.
All right, and Benjamin.
Good morning, everyone. Ben Cornish with First Financial Bank.
Great, Sandy.
Good morning, Sandy Kusnoff with Frank's Glass.
Awesome. Is it Marviette?
That is correct. Thank you, Tiffany. My name is Marviette Johnson, and I am with Employers Resource Association.
Great, thanks for being here. And Caitlin?
Sorry, Caitlin is Women Helping Women.
All right, Nancy?
Good morning, I'm Nancy O'Neill with the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce.
And Laura?
I'm Laura Merrill with the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce.
Great, thank you all for being here. We have a few more registered, so they may pop on, but we'll go ahead and get started. Dan, I'll turn it back to you. You're muted.
There we go. Sorry. We're very excited. Casey, the floor is yours. I can't wait to hear about your WorkStrong program and kind of a little general information about Women Helping Women. I think would be good for everyone as well. So Casey.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much. And I will go ahead and share screen. I've got some slides that we'll go through about Women Helping Women and our WorkStrong program. So let's see here. So as Dan said, my name is Casey Frazee Katz. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Policy for Women Helping Women. I have been with Women Helping Women for almost 10 years, about 9.5 at this point. I started as an advocate, and then I've been working in our Butler County office for about the last 4.5 years, and then recently was promoted into a new position covering our school-based programming, our bar training, our corporate WorkStrong program, which we'll talk more in depth about today, and also our campus advocacy. And there are, and I know they've introduced themselves, there are 2 other Women Helping Women staff here today who might chime in with different elements and are able to answer questions in the chat as well. So to give you a little bit of information about Women Helping Women before we get into WorkStrong, this is just a bit of a layout about the services we provide. Women Helping Women is an agency that works with survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, and stalking. We also provide prevention services in Hamilton and Butler counties. The services that we provide in general, these crisis services, are available in a 4-county region: Butler County, Hamilton, Brown, and Adams. We have our 24-hour hotline, which during COVID also became textable thanks to funding support specifically from Butler County entities. So we're very grateful to Butler County for that. Also 24-hour hospital accompaniment. We respond to all hospitals in each of the counties where we operate. Court and law enforcement advocacy. We do individual crisis intervention. That could be by phone, by Zoom, in person, at court, etc. We also provide support groups, which right now have been virtual with the pandemic, which has been interesting to be able to provide new ways for survivors to be able to connect who might not be able to physically get to an office space. And then we have our school-based prevention education program. We work in middle and high schools in Butler County and also Hamilton County. And then we provide community education. We have OBGYN offices or health centers or campuses who will have us come in and talk about what the issues are, what the dynamics are with the issues we deal with. And then also corporate training, which we'll get into. And I thought that this is for the Hamilton Chamber, that people might be interested what our services look like specifically in Butler County. So we provide all the same services that I just talked about, and then specifically campus advocacy, Miami Hamilton, Miami Oxford, and Miami Middletown. And last year specifically, we served approximately 5,000 survivors, or I'm sorry, 1,300 survivors with about 5,000 services. So WorkStrong itself. So what we'll talk about with this is what gender-based violence is, what the statistics are that we think demonstrates an urgency to act, WorkStrong services to be able to prevent gender-based violence and respond, and then what results you can expect and what folks are saying about WorkStrong and Women Helping Women. So as a little bit, before I get into this, just as a little bit of background with WorkStrong, this is essentially a social venture that started just after the Me Too movement began, as there was an increased awareness of issues of sexual harassment in the workplace, and also survivors who are experiencing things maybe not at the workplace, but who are going to work. And it may be challenging for them physically to get to work or to be able to focus while they're at work, depending on what it is that they're dealing with. So we use a term called gender-based violence. More and more often we're hearing this also referred to as power-based violence, because it might not be as gender-specific depending on the situation. But gender-based violence is also power-based. This is violence against an individual based on biological sex, gender identity, or expression. And this can happen in a variety of forms. So if it's physical, sexual, financial, psychological, that can be intimate partner violence, stalking, sexual assault, human trafficking falls in here as well. And the sense with WorkStrong is that really what happens in the home flows into the street and also the workplace. So this is, again, just a little bit more about what we do, where we serve survivors. Our goal really is to show up where people are. That's why we go to classrooms, courtrooms, the hospital, why we answer the phone 24/7. We want to make sure that people have access to services continuously. And then these are a few more numbers of where we operate, what we do. We do work in a trauma-informed and trauma-competent manner, working with those intervention services and then also prevention. And then last year, just a little snapshot from agency-wide, we had about 12,000 hotline calls and showed up for about 10,000 community members, so in various training and education. So we'll focus a little bit more on our corporate and professional training. And just to give you a sense, in case anyone's interested, we had an increase of about 23% in 2020, the same period compared to 2019. I don't know if people have read articles maybe about the impact of gender-based violence or domestic violence during the pandemic. And it's, luckily I think we're in a better spot certainly than we were 2 years ago, but survivors are certainly still feeling the effects of this. We saw lethality rates spike. So maybe a relationship that could have been more on the unhealthy side, we saw spike to more abusive. We saw more, and we work also at the prosecutor's office, and we've seen higher rates of violence, physical violence used, maybe weapons used, than we ever have in the past. And then just another stat about the increase of calls to our hotline in that same period of 2020 compared to 2019. We also have a program that I didn't mention. We don't operate this program currently in Butler County. We have a program called Divert, where we respond on scene in Hamilton County jurisdictions, at least so far, so they're domestic violence calls, and we respond with law enforcement. And we saw about 55% of survivors report strangulation by a partner. We're also sadly seeing that increase as well. So now that can be a little bit intense, but I wanted to share that just to sort of make the case or show the foundation that unfortunately this is something that we see happen and happen at increasing numbers. So, why should you care? Why does this matter? Lifetime, these are CDC numbers, about 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men will experience some form of physical violence from their partners. So given that those numbers are so high, this is why, in terms of our typical response pattern to meet people where they are, is why we also then have expanded into this WorkStrong program over the last 5 years or so. So here's what we do, and we'll go through each of these. So we customize this training to each workplace so that it fits what those needs are, what that workforce looks like, and where they are. So we do that through policy alignment. We do an in-person training at the executive and management level, and then in person for employee education. We can also do that virtually. And then we also have specific online training modules. So depending, there are some organizations that have thousands of employees. So online modules might be a little more realistic for them versus companies that might have 50, 200, et cetera, employees. We also have an awareness campaign. We have materials that we give organizations so that they can share that with their employees. And then we provide 24/7 response to survivors in the workplace, or we can arrange meetings as needed and provide that technical expertise on call to HR and managers who might need that. So in terms of policy alignment, so the first step in our WorkStrong program, after someone expresses that they're interested and we meet and see if that feels like a good fit for them, is this policy alignment. So we'll review policies, engage against best practices and what items should be included to make sure that companies are prepared to respond when someone might have a domestic violence issue or have been assaulted or might have experienced something in that workplace. And then, as I mentioned with our training, we'll go through some elements of this as well. So the training itself is about an hour and a half. That can be either virtual or in person. And it's a power hour and a half. So we try to make sure that it's engaging. We have several exercises to make it really real for people who are going through this, and so they can really understand what those dynamics are. And then these are just a couple of snaps from the online module that we have. Like I said, some larger organizations prefer to do online modules just because that might be more cost effective for their workforce. But of course, this is an option available to anyone. And then we practice, we call it stepping up. So we pull from something called bystander intervention. So bystander intervention is something, and these are a few of the areas that we focus on in the training, that someone can be direct in a response, distract, delegate, or delay. So as people are identifying maybe someone is experiencing an issue or they're witnessing that in the workplace, we give skills in the training to make sure people have options of what they could do. Sometimes people would like to be able to directly talk with a coworker. Maybe they're seeing who's having a tough time. If there's maybe an active issue, someone might want to distract or help distract someone who might be stressed. Or delegate. Maybe it's something that needs to go to a manager or to the HR department, or delay. Maybe that's something that doesn't feel like a fit for that person to specifically respond or get involved. And we go through that a little bit more thoroughly than in our training. And then the workplace awareness campaign. This is after the training is completed. These are materials that we send to the company so that they are able to share that with their workforce. And why this is important is to make sure that people know that this is happening, to make sure that they know they have support, they have these services, that the organization cares, that the organization is aware of issues that employees might be experiencing offsite that could come into the workplace. And then, as I mentioned, that on-call response and technical expertise. What was interesting before we started WorkStrong, and many years ago when I was an advocate, also helping to answer our hotline, we would get calls fairly regularly from managers, from HR directors who would say, I've got an employee, they're experiencing domestic violence at home. I really don't know what to do, but this is a good employee. I want to make sure that I give them the services or support they need. Can you help me, or what can they do? So we realized, especially as we started to pull WorkStrong together, we had this anecdotal data that managers are asking for this information. They don't exactly know what to do, but they want to be able to support their workers. So we are able to provide that technical expertise 24/7. We have advocates who are always answering the hotline, who are able to help safety plan, process through what the options might be for that manager. And then, of course, for that survivor, all of our services are available for survivors at any point. So 24/7 with the hotline, or any daytime services like filing for protection orders or support groups. So one of the things that's also important with that awareness campaign is that we're creating a culture of concern. So these are just a few snippets from our training. One of the things we talk about in our training is recognizing the signs of domestic violence. So these are a few. Someone who could have a change in job performance, which could honestly be either direction. This could be someone who maybe is just having challenge focusing. It's hard to keep up the same performance level that they had. Maybe they're distracted, they're showing up late. And it could go the other way. Someone who is escaping what's happening at home, so they're working more often. They're trying to work harder. They're trying to do more than they would have in the past, but it's a change. And that's the piece that matters to key in on. They might also be getting frequent calls and texts from a partner who's maybe trying to keep tabs on them, trying to see where they are, what they're doing. Unfortunately, we see a fairly high rate of perpetrators who may try to show up at someone's workplace, which can be a bit challenging, especially if someone works in a public space where it might be harder to get that person to go away. If they're working retail or restaurant or any place, again, that's a public space. But also this could be a challenge for more of a private workspace where someone might show up or wait in the parking lot. Someone might show a reluctance to leave, that maybe they don't want to go home to the situation that they're dealing with. Again, showing up late, leaving early, calling in sick. They might have partners showing up at the workplace, which can be quite a difficult issue, and have high lethality, so high risk for something serious to happen to that person. So then as we go through signs, we talk with folks about how to intervene. So learn how and when to step in, and when it makes sense to, and when maybe it makes more sense to try to engage HR if it's an issue that needs that. And then about what to say, how to respond to someone. These are 3 key things that we say as an agency. This is on all of our materials, is that we believe survivors, that it's not their fault, and that help is available so we can get them connected to resources. And so about knowing where to turn. So making sure people have this information about resources that are available. What I've seen over the nearly 10 years I've been doing this work with Women Helping Women is that this is the type of agency that people don't necessarily know about the services until they need the services, or maybe a friend has experienced something and they've had to receive services. So this is helpful to be able to create awareness about what's available for people. So these, I'm going to take a quick drink of water. So this is, there's a little bit of stats of our surveys that we take after each training. So we have 3 key outcomes that we look at in these trainings. One is that someone feels confident or very confident that they're able to provide resources that are available to survivors, like Women Helping Women and others, shelters in the area like YWCA, et cetera. And that people would feel confident or very confident to utilize at least one bystander intervention technique, which again could even just be getting help or calling 911 if or as needed. And that someone could identify at least one sign of gender-based violence, particularly at the workplace, how someone might be affected. So this is our, on average, of the before and after of how not confident, and then how confident people have felt. So we feel pretty strongly about the trainings. We get these consistent results, consistent outcomes, that people are feeling more confident and able, they feel more skilled and resourced following training. So in terms of what others say, so this is a quote from Pete Fernandez at Rheingeist. And actually we just finished another training series with Rheingeist for their Greater Cincinnati and their Columbus operations, or sorry, we'll finish next week. They have been a great partner for us. They actually started with our bar training. We do a training with bars or restaurants about similarly being able to identify signs of potential perpetrators in the workplace, which for them would be the bar, and then how to intervene. How do they need to respond to that? So Rheingeist started as a bar training partner and then ended up becoming a WorkStrong partner. They felt that this information was valuable enough to be able to share with warehouse workers, sales team, marketing, all their other entities within the organization. So they've been a really strong partner. And then this is just a little video. We can put the video in the chat in case people are interested to be able to see that. And then to give you a sense of who we've worked with, these are some logos of organizations and companies that we have worked with in planning stages and training for a partnership for WorkStrong. So a good variety of government, corporations in a variety of different areas as well, nonprofits, etc. So that is what I have, at least at this point. Are there any questions that anyone has about what I talked about, what our services are, and what WorkStrong is?
Hi, I do have a question, if I could, Casey. Is there a cost to organizations for the training? And
there is a cost to organizations for the training. It depends on if someone wants in-person or virtual training, if they prefer to go through the modules. We usually, when we have a first meeting with folks, we'll talk through what the pricing is based on organization size as well. It's usually a per person, usually a per person rate.
per person who attends training, or just the entire organization?
Yeah, per person of who would be attending the training.
Okay, and how long is the in-person training? Is it just a day, or?
Just an hour and a half. We try to keep it, try to keep it tight and focused. And then Sarah also put in the chat, in case anyone is interested, just for a conversation, if you're interested in this program, so that we could maybe schedule a call and talk a little bit more and what that pricing might look like, so you have a better idea. I think it's like a 5-question survey. Yeah.
Unmute, Karen.
Sorry.
There we go. I came in just a little bit late, and I really liked your presentation. It's mostly about companies, obviously. Is Women Helping Women only for women? I didn't catch that. As in, if I've got a domestic violence thing, is it male and female, or only women?
That's a very good question. It is. So our organization was founded in the 70s during the feminist movement. So that's why we have Women Helping Women. We try to play around with this. We do serve people of all genders. So we try to highlight things like that in our logo, like we do to separate the colors for men. But yes, we do serve all people.
Okay.
Good question.
And I have a personal situation that I really want to try to find an answer. I have a person who is in a relationship, and the husband is abusive, as in won't let her have the keys to the car, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's a mental abuse, emotional abuse situation. There is currently there's no physical abuse. When she had called Women Helping Women, she was informed that the only way that they could really help her was if there was physical abuse. What can you tell me, or on side we'll make contact, where else can we send her to try to get some help?
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Because certainly we work with survivors who are experiencing, maybe if it's more psychological abuse. So
Right.
usually we'll try to safety plan in that way and work through what it is that they'd like to see happen. So is that person at a place where they'd like to leave the relationship, or would they just like to be safe within the relationship? We see that leaving the relationship is usually the most dangerous time for someone. And like that, like you said, so it's psychological and more mental abuse. Leaving is usually a time where we see perpetrators then increase what they're doing. So maybe it moves to physical assault or sexual assault or stalking, which can end up being quite serious. So I would say, and if that person is in Butler County, if that might help to speak with one of our advocates who's in our Butler County office directly, and I can put.
Actually, they're in Hamilton County.
Oh, they're in Hamilton. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would say, and Sarah actually just put in the chat our hotline number.
Okay.
So I'd say if they'd like to call the hotline for immediate help, but certainly, and I think the next slide has my information. Yeah. So if that helps, they're also welcome to ask for me when they call the hotline, and they'll route them to me. My email is there as well, in case that helps.
Great. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Casey, I have a question. are services coordinated with other agencies like the YWCA and all that kind of stuff? How is, because, and maybe I'm the only one who's uninformed, but I was looking forward to this morning because I've heard the name Women Helping Women many times, but I actually wasn't sure what you actually did.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
So are those services coordinated? How does someone, if they call the hotline, are they referred to different agencies? I mean, how does that work?
Yes, good question. So yes, we work really closely with our partners. So whether that's we work pretty closely with the YWCA in Hamilton. They help house a lot of the folks who might call our hotline. We provide essentially complementary services to each other. So YWCA has shelter. We're a non-shelter organization. So we then provide what happens in the community. So court response, hospital response, support groups, which YWCA will also offer support groups. So we ideally work in tandem. They help people get housed. So their focus more specifically is on the housing element. And then we're helping folks with other pieces, safety planning. We also have some amount of financial resources and programs we can get people connected to if they need, let's say, short-term storage. If they're trying to get out of a situation, we have funds that help support that. So the YWCA will often refer folks to us to try to help figure out some of those elements so that someone can be safe and transition into a safer place for them.
So and this might be a difficult, unfair question for me to ask, but should you guys be the first point of contact, or?
That's a good question. I think it depends on exactly what that issue is for someone. I think what's nice about us is that we operate in multiple areas. So if someone, let's say, is coming from Butler County, but it's not safe for them to stay in Butler County, if they call our hotline, because we're also connected with the other DV programs in the area, we can get them connected with other services. And I think it's a higher percentage of people who will end up needing non-shelter services. They need more support with filing protection order, with having someone go to court, filing charges against someone. So, and I might be biased since I've worked for this agency for almost a decade.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's your hour, so you can be a little biased.
Right. And we have good relationships with our partners. So we try to refer people where it's most helpful. And for what that's worth as well. So we provide services for domestic violence survivors. And then we're also the only rape crisis program that operates in Butler, Hamilton, Brown, and Adams. And so that's why we provide hospital response, since we're the state sanctioned rape crisis program.
Okay, thank you. I have another question.
Sure.
I thought I heard you say it's the one program that is emergency response that you went with law enforcement, that's been temporarily suspended.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
That is
I
ongoing.
misunderstand that.
Yes, so good clarification. That is ongoing. We suspended for a very short period of time at the very beginning of COVID. That has otherwise been in continuous operation since we launched in 2018. But it is currently, at this point, we started with Cincinnati Police, and then we've expanded to other jurisdictions in Hamilton County. And I'm hopeful at some point, as we have funding and as that works, that we can expand to Butler County. We see how helpful that is on scene. Law enforcement have so much that they have to deal with. And so it's been really helpful. And we hear this consistently from officers, that it's nice to have an advocate on scene who's educated about this and who can just work with those survivors and maybe any kids who are on scene. And then law enforcement can focus on what they have to, which is the perpetrator and filing the charges and maybe having to take someone downtown or issue a warrant. So I'm hopeful at some point we can do this in Butler County as well.
So it's not in Butler County?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would make that happen? Is it purely a funding issue, or? Sorry, I ask a lot of questions.
I think these are good questions though. I think funding certainly is an element. We would need to make sure that we're staffed 24/7. I think we have, maybe 25 part-time staff who operate our divert program in Hamilton County, and then some full-time program supervisors. So it definitely would take some funding to make sure that would happen. And then agencies who feel ready to be able to work with advocates in that way. And in my experience working with law enforcement departments in Butler County, I think that many of them would be open to that as long as there's funding. You know, so many of them are underfunded as it is and need support for their operations. So I think if we got funding, that would be a game changer.
Thank you.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Casey, I have a comment on Facebook Live from a local business, Rooster Radio. They said not a comment, but just wanted to say thank you for all the work that you do within our great community.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it is the work of many hands, many, many people who make this possible. So, yeah. I also just wanted to put out a note for, so Sarah and Caitlin, who are two of our development folks, are on the call today as well. So I don't know if either of them wanted to add anything about WorkStrong or services that the agency provides. Certainly no pressure, but at least while we're in this moment, if you are interested.
I will hop on just quickly with my half of my voice here, just to reiterate that. So the way that the pricing is structured with WorkStrong, we do have something for everyone. So that's part of that intro conversation, is looking at what your workforce looks like and what your needs are, and you know what that sweet spot might be for, you know, where you're at and what you're ready for and what we can offer.
This is Marviette again. First, this was very, very interesting. I was not familiar with all of your programs and services, and I'm sure I didn't even hear everything that you all offer. I used to be on an HR advisory board for Women Helping Women through your past board chair, Erica Parker.
Yeah.
And so I have worked with Cheryl, your CFO, on different projects and things like that. And so in 21, I had to move on, but it was a wonderful experience. I really, really am so glad that we have an organization like yours for women in Greater Cincinnati. But my question is, my organization is having an event for employers. We are a membership organization, and it's about programs and services for employees, because employers are looking for any way they can differentiate themselves, as well as right now things having to do with mental health and wellness for employees it's very much needed and wanted by employees. And so I was wondering, is it you that I talked to about perhaps joining us for that event, or?
Oh, great. Yes, I would say, yeah, that would be me. That sounds wonderful. I can put, I know it's listed here, but in case it's any easier, I can put my email in the chat. And thank you I knew your name looked so familiar. Thank you so much for your service with HR. That is so needed. Yeah.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. But yeah, would love to talk with you more about that. And I think you're right. We're seeing too that the workplace is shifting to a more employee focused workplace. And so being able to tune into your workforce, tune into wellness, what's going on, how can we support you? Because that's, and I guess one of the elements we didn't talk about as much is the potential productivity loss or the profit loss that a business experiences when someone is experiencing domestic violence. And so sometimes these pretty basic services can really help workers feel engaged and supported and continue being able to be ideally, effective people, what they need in life. And then also as workers too. So I think it's a holistic approach in that way.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I look forward to speaking with you about it further. Thank you.
Absolutely.
We just had a question, actually, from Sarah, that wanted to know if this tape deck could be shared with the people. Absolutely, it can. This will also be stored on YouTube for later viewing. So and people can view this at any time. And we actually find that attendees sometimes are viewing these sessions up to a year or two after we've taped them. So.
Wow, that's great.
So, but yeah, send us this information. We can also put that out.
Absolutely. So, yes.
I have one more question, Casey. One of the things that's, I'm sure, challenging to you, because it's certainly challenging to me, is the the crossover and collaboration between the nonprofit organizations and the providers and that type of thing. So do you guys provide awareness and training for people in the field for other nonprofit organizations? And the reason I ask that is we work pretty closely with an organization who shall remain nameless. You know, I know they've had some clients that we were involved with that were having some domestic issues, and I never heard them. Now, maybe they did, and I just not aware of it, but I never heard them talk about, you know, calling, you know, your organization in to help deal with it.
Ah, okay. So if, just to make sure I understand, so that you were working with a nonprofit and they had folks who were experiencing domestic violence, but Women Helping Women's name did not come up. Is that correct? Okay.
So, you know, and basically it's a situation where we have interns from that organization that we're having some challenges. So first of all, it probably would help us if we were better trained. But I just wonder if, you know, other nonprofits are connected with you guys enough to know when they can't handle a situation.
I think that's a really good point. So we definitely do awareness. We work with the Butler County Educational Service Center. We're part of their cross systems process and meetings so that we're sharing with other providers what our services are and where we are in the community, what we offer. One of the things I've noticed, so we have only been in Butler County, it will be 10 years in January. And we've only been in Hamilton for 5 years this summer. And then I started, it would have been 5 years ago this fall in our Butler County office. And what I noticed is that if people, when I met people, is that they might have known Women Helping Women and that we were in Cincinnati, but they didn't know we were in Butler County. And then I met other people who had no idea that our agency existed. And I think similar to what I mentioned earlier, I think we're, at least in Butler County, maybe still a little bit, one of those agencies that unless people need those services, they might not be aware because we are still fairly new and certainly fairly new in Hamilton as well. We, you know, in whatever form or fashion that takes, you're also welcome to reach out to me in case I can try to help figure out some kind of a meeting, or we can get advocates to meet with the interns who might be having issues. I think sometimes people just don't know exactly where to go or who to call. And I think we're just still building awareness within Butler County and Hamilton specifically.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I think that's telling, you know, and certainly I would imagine, you know, people who are interested in this might already have that vested interest. But I think, you know, even as everyone's talking, that just seems so telling that there are so many different stories of instances that have happened at the workplace at a variety of ages and levels too. Interns, we actually had an intern several years ago who was experiencing something. So it's, you know, sadly, domestic violence, sexual assault and stalking are things that can affect all people at any level. So however we can be helpful or provide technical assistance or talk about WorkStrong, if that would be helpful, to have more specific WorkStrong training for any of your organizations, certainly let me know. Happy to share more.
So I promise no more questions, but I can't help myself. I have another one. You know, for the, you know, you have spent quite a bit of time talking about people who have been identified as being in a crisis situation, and, you know, they're dealing with this. You know, for the employer, I think, you know, the challenges are situations that they have no idea, which is, I'm sure, part of what your training is, to recognize those signs. But what do you think is the percentage, which might be an interesting, you know, piece of data for employers? What do you think is the percentage of, you know, people who are really in this situation that is never reported? Do you have any thoughts on that? You know, so that this is going on, the employer has no idea what's going on with this employee that might have at times been a great employee and all of a sudden they're not, you know, and, you know, do you have any data on how many actually go unreported out of fear or not knowing, you know, who to turn to or whatever?
That's a really good question. I don't have any recent numbers of exactly what a percentage would be, but we do know particularly domestic violence and sexual assault certainly are very underreported. for a wide variety of reasons, whether someone is concerned about retribution or that aggressive person, that perpetrator has threatened them or will take something away from them. If they share children, that's sometimes, I hate to say, that's a power element or a bargaining piece that perpetrator will use against them. If you leave me or you file a divorce or XYZ, I'll take the kids, I'll take the house. So there are a variety of reasons someone might never report. And that is, like you said, that is part of the training, is to make sure that managers and employees, coworkers are equipped with this information so that someone might not just jump quickly to, well, they used to be a good employee, but now they're just really not showing up. Let's work on a performance plan, right? But to ask questions, what's going on? How can we help, to be able to provide that support instead, and not just write off an employee who, especially if they're suddenly changing. They used to be maybe a high performer and now they just can't focus, they're showing up late, is to ideally lean into that conversation and ask a few more questions. But you make a good point. It's definitely underreported. Thank you for that. You have great questions.
No more from me. I'm done.
And that's okay if you have more. Are there any other questions or anything else that we can help answer, at least for now? Okay, well, thank you. And thank you so much to the Chamber for being able to allow us to talk about WorkStrong today. We really appreciate this. And yeah, you're certainly more than welcome to reach out if you have questions. I'll put my information back up there. And yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you. I think it's been very informative. Laura, do you want to just explain, how people can view this later and all of that? It is on our YouTube channel. So.
Yep. So find Greater Hamilton Chamber. We've got a YouTube channel. So we've got all of these saved on YouTube, and they're also on our Facebook page. So anytime you can go back, watch any of these videos right on Facebook also, because we've got, a couple years of resources going on now. So it's a great way to find out some information that maybe you weren't aware about and connect with some organizations. Any of the presenters we've had over time will be more than happy to discuss with you anything you need to know about their organization. So Casey, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. We've got your info in the chat. If anybody has any questions, Casey is more than happy to help you out, or anybody in her organization. We'll be back in a couple weeks. Our next coffee is, let's see here, May 10th, Tuesday, May 10th. And we will have Becky Ailing from the BCW Workforce. She's going to be sharing about the Workforce Investment Board and the pre-apprenticeship program. So we'll be back here 9 a.m., 10 a.m. on Zoom on May 10th. And we look forward to having you with us again. So again, Casey, thank you. And we will see you all in a couple weeks.
I learned a lot. Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you.
So much. All right,
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Casey.
Yes, thank you so much. See you all.
See you in a
No
couple
problem.
weeks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.